Welcome to Deep in the Valley, a Missouri Valley basketball podcast. I'm Dr. Chris Bowser, joined by Brian Duttler, and we've got a breaking news episode for you tonight, as breaking news as we can get after a full day at our real jobs. But for the first time in over 2 decades, there is a coaching vacancy at the University of Northern Iowa. Coach Jacobson took the reins from Greg McDermott and became the architect of one of the most consistent mid-major programs in the country. This morning, Coach Jake has accepted the head coaching job at Utah State. And tonight, Brian Duttler and I react. On tonight's episode, we reflect on Coach Jake's 20-year run at UNI, break down the legacy that he leaves behind, and then we go full Valley Insider mode and walk through real candidates to replace him. Guys with deep UNI ties, coaching pedigree, and maybe even a few conspiracy theories. Brian's got some candidate names. I may chime in with some as well, and that could deepen the conversation to who the new coach might be and how they'll build their staff. Brian, before we dive in any deeper, I just want to turn it over to you, and I want you to give your reaction to hearing the news this morning about Coach Jake leaving the University of Northern Iowa after 20 years as head coach and accepting the head coaching job at Utah State University.
Well, as you said, Chris, as the real day job got in the way of this breaking news, I've had a little bit of time to reflect over the past 9 hours or so. And it was when you see the tweet and you see the headlines, it's initial shock because you didn't think it was going to happen. It's always been in the back of my mind, I think most Panther minds, that at some point in time you thought maybe Coach Jake was going to leave, but most of us probably thought that time had already sailed. He'd been so successful in Cedar Falls over the 20 years as a head coach, an additional 5 as an assistant. But I listened to his press conference earlier today, but it was just time. You talked about the prevailing traits that Mac installed first, and then Coach Jacobson has expanded upon, and that's the word family. And being a former manager just like you, Bows, while it's been a lot of sunsets since we've been in Cedar Falls, I can safely say that we have been a part of that family, and that is a true reflection of the man that Coach Jacobson is, and just been a great steward of the basketball program, a great representative of the University of Northern Iowa. Just a phenomenal career. He ends his career at Northern Iowa with a 397 win, 258 loss record, which is about right at 61%, I think, something like that, win percentage. The 19, almost 20 wins a season, 3 NIT bursts, 2 CIT bursts, 5 NCAA tournaments, a 5-time coach of the year in the Valley, all-time conference winning leader in wins. He set the record in that this year, along with in the conference tournament with wins. This guy exudes winning. He exudes confidence. He believes in his players, and it goes right back to the word family. It's a family decision, and we wish him nothing but the best of luck. He's been a great asset for Northern Iowa, and now we turn the page and take a look and see who's potentially could be leading the Panthers into the 26-27 season and beyond.
But beyond the wins, Brian, let's talk a little bit about what this program became known for. I think when I look at the Panther program over the last 20 years, I see player development, I see roster continuity, I see consistency, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of fans sometimes forget. It is fantastic to have that kind of continuity and consistency in a program. I think one of the things that I will really enjoy about the Ben Jacobson era for a long time is that you can go back in history to the beginning of his tenure with the Panthers all the way to today, and because of the way they play, you can say this person is very similar to that athlete who played that position. And so I think that's really cool. I think they also became known for toughness and discipline, right? They were a really tough out. No matter who they played, they were able to stay in games. They were able to win some games that I think the national media would say that they should not win. And so I think that's really good. They have a specific brand of basketball that travels. Northern Iowa wasn't just good. The Panthers were predictably good every single year. Mr. Duttler, what do you think about that?
Yeah, Chris, I think you nailed it when you mentioned consistently good every single year. And doing a little research this evening and looking at some of the stuff on Coach Jacobson and what he's meant to UNI, we finished, Northern Iowa finished in the top half of the conference 14 out of the 20 years he was head coach of the program. That speaks to the consistency. Would we like to have a few more wins? Absolutely. Do you think we should have probably won some more games than we did? Absolutely. The other thing that reminds me of Coach Jake was adaptability. There's a lot of different ebbs and flows when it comes to your roster construction and just how you're assembling that team. And earlier on in the Coach Jacobson years, we were known for defense. And we're still known for defense, as you can see with the stats that we've talked about earlier this season and with points scored. But just overall tenacity, whether it was pack line defense, whether it was defensive changing principles, you knew that when Northern Iowa took the floor, it was going to be 99.9% man-to-man defense, and they were going to guard you once you cross half court, and made that the hallmark. A lot of different evolutions when it comes to the offense, and more recently with the flow offense, more of a European style, and leading into what we were running and operating this year. But it's just adaptability is another thing that I think Coach Jake was able to instill into the guys, instill in our program. It's an old school mentality a little bit now. If you take a look over the 20 years that he was head coach, there's continuity in that roster. Very few people left the program. Way more people improved through the course of their 4 years than left. And I think with the coaching staff, that talks about the continuity as well. We've had some assistants come and go, but if you take a look at a solid whole program for the course of 20 years, there really wasn't a whole heck of a lot of change. And Coach Jake believes in his team. He believes in his staff. He believes in the support staff around him. And he's had the right team in place for every step of the way. So those are some of the things that I remember Coach Jake from on the basketball X's and O's and how to run a program. As I said earlier on, being a part of the basketball family has been important to me. I know it's been important to a lot of people, and he's helped foster that. And I look forward for the years to come of being involved with Northern Iowa basketball, and he's the guiding principle that helped get that done.
So, Mr. Duttler, let's start here. Let's start with Ben Jacobson, the man that's been the face of the Panther basketball organization for the last 20 years, the dean of the Missouri Valley Conference, 397 wins in Cedar Falls, 4 NCAA tournament wins over UNLV, Kansas, Wyoming, and Texas, 2 wins in the NIT, 4 in the CIT, 4 regular season Valley championships, 5 Arch Madness championships, 5-time Valley Coach of the Year awards, and 220 Missouri Valley Conference wins, which is the most all time. This isn't just a coaching change. It's an end of an era. Brian, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Coach Jake era in Cedar Falls.
Well, we wish Coach Jacobson nothing but the best of luck as his next stop at Utah State. And now that creates an opportunity here for a new head coach to lead the Northern Iowa men's basketball program. Megan Franklin had a very difficult job at hand, as she was able to come in a year ago and hire a Todd Census and football coach. But I think more importantly, the figurehead within the university culture at Northern Iowa has been Coach Jacobson and the men's basketball team. And this hire has to go right. And I have no doubt with some of the internal candidates or some of the candidates that are out there that she's going to have quite a few people that she's going to be able to talk to and hopefully be able to hire someone that does mean a lot to the Panther program. I've, over the course of the day, been able to shake down that Coach Jacobson, Coach Matt tree a little bit. And I really want to start with the first candidate that's currently on staff, and that's Seth Tuttle. Seth was a player at Northern Iowa. He was part of the great run from 2011 to 2015. Larry Bird, Missouri Valley Conference Player of the Year in 2015. Second team, third team All-American honors with that 31-win team. Has, after his career at Northern Iowa, went on to play professionally overseas. Spent 3-4 years doing that, and then come back to Northern Iowa and worked his way up. His total now has been at Northern Iowa for 8 years. I started as a graduate assistant for a couple of years, moved into that video coordinator position, which I think as we go through the list of candidates and potential hires for Northern Iowa, that's been a common trend with people within the basketball business. And Coach Jacobson is working in that video department here at Northern Iowa. And Coach Tuttle may had doing that for a year, and then I moved into the full-time assistant role 5 years ago. So a total of 8 years on the coaching staff. The energetic piece along the sidelines on the recruiting trail really has grown into the offensive coordinator position within the Panther basketball program. You see him with the whiteboard, basically calling all of the offensive sets. Has a direct connection with some of the booster program. It is good in community. And as we sat in St. Louis, Chris, during the conference tournament, we talked just about this scenario potentially happening. We just thought it might be about 5 years down the road. But I think going into this at this point in time, that Coach Tuttle would remain from the staff, would be the link between Coach Jacobson and the future, and is really the primary candidate if you were to ask me. The second person I want to bring up is Coach Kyle Green. We all know his son AJ and his daughter Emerson from their great playing careers at Northern Iowa. But could the fourth time be a charm? And by what I mean by that is KG has been with the program 3 different occasions. Coming on, leaving to take a head coaching job, coming back in a couple different iterations of Coach Green being involved with the program. So it could be the fourth time be a charm. Currently, he's been on the ISU bench for the last 5 years. Prior to that, he was an associate head coach at Northern Iowa starting in the 17-18 season. That a precursor sometime as an assistant coach as well. He has 3 coaching stints, head coaching stints. One was at Wisconsin LeClaire, one was at for a year, Lewis University at the Division II level for a couple of years, and then early on at the turn of the century in 2001, was at Western State College as a head coach as well. So the defensive mastermind, if you take a look at the Iowa State side of things, but also here at Northern Iowa, just a great all-around basketball coach, and 30 years within coaching college basketball, so longevity is there, the knowledge is there, could be a potential great pick as with his roots are still within the community in Cedar Falls. The third person I'd like to just bring up would be Paul Jesterson. And as we've been watching a few March Madness highlights over the last couple of weeks in the 10-year anniversary of Northern Iowa beating Texas in the round of 32, that is a Paulie boy from half court to bank end, move the Panthers on to play Texas A&M. But after the playing career, Coach Jefferson, currently he is the head coach of the Phoenix Valley Sun with the Phoenix G League team. He spent 1 year there prior with Coach John Little, which is another name that we might take a look at and explore a little bit later on. This is his first year as a head coach with the Valley Sun. Prior to that, I spent some time with Porter Moser, which all Valley fans will know from his run at Loyola, but he did this at the University of Oklahoma with basketball and player development. And then prior to that, spent 3 years with the Atlanta Hawks organization. And what I think is interesting, Chris, within the Ben Jacobson and Coach McDermott tree, we have seen a lot of guys move on to whether it's video coordination, whether it's player development, basketball development, that got that started in the video coordination room, but moved along into NBA organizations as well, and it has really cut their teeth to round out all aspects of their coaching pedigree. While all 3, other than Coach Green, he does have some head coaching experience, but Coach Tuttle and Coach Jefferson at this point in time have no collegiate head coaching experience. Could be something to look at, but I do remember 20 years ago watching Greg McDermott press conference when he left Northern Iowa to go to Iowa State. We kind of all sat around and said, can Coach Jacobson handle this? I think without having any prior head coaching experience in his background, the institution Northern Iowa took that gamble 20 years ago. Don't know if it's necessarily that much of a gamble at this point in time. And if you can get your kids to respond to your coaching method and you find good people within the team, you're going to be successful. Those are some of the 3 names that I've been able to take a look at and think would probably fit immediately within the Northern Iowa program. Chris, what do you think at this point in time?
Thank you, Mr. Duttler, for those three names of potential coaching replacements for Ben Jacobson, who has, as of today, departed for Utah State University to be their next head men's coach, leaving a vacancy for our beloved Panthers. I've got a couple of names that I want to throw out, too. My first one is Brooks McCowan. This one could be really interesting to me. He's the current head coach at Missouri Western State University, and recent Valley teams, the Drake Bulldogs, have been very successful about pulling coaches out of the state of Missouri. But Coach McCowan has been successful this season in St. Joe's, Missouri. Brooks won 21 games in his first season, taking the Griffins to the NCAA Division II tournament. That is the most season wins in the program since 2002-2003 season. at Missouri Western. They had 4 other wins over schools that made the NCAA tournament as well. At Upper Iowa, McCowan's team won at least 21 games in 3 of his last 4 seasons, including 21-9 in 24-25, 22-10 in 23-24, and a program best 26-6 in the 21-22 season. The Peacocks posted winning seasons in 10 of McCowan's 12 years on the sidelines. They are known for trademark fast-paced brand. The Peacocks averaged at least 80 points per game in each of the last 12 seasons when he was on the bench. Why it could make sense: he's a current sitting head coach, a proven program builder, understands the UNI culture. This could be a bridge candidate between continuity and proven leadership. A couple other names. So a name rising in coaching circles. I would like to talk a little bit about John Little. After UNI, John Little played overseas from 2007 to 2016. So obviously a former UNI player. He did serve as the video coordinator at UNI for 2 years and then moved on to professional coaching ranks. He was named the associate head coach of the Maine Celtics in May of 2023. After a season in Maine, he served as the head coach in the G League with the Valley Suns. And then last summer, July 19th of 2025, Little was hired to serve as an assistant coach for the Phoenix Suns on Coach Jordan Ott's staff. He is definitely UNI family, but has made a name for himself nationally. And I think that's really fantastic. And so blends UNI roots with NBA experience. And I think that could be really great. Another name that I'd love to throw out there is Brian Jones. I like BJ. BJ was on the roster when I was a student manager at UNI. Brian would bring experience and credibility. One thing that I know that Brian and I will talk about later is if he's not the head coach, boy, I like him on the staff as a former head coach that can bring maturity and an opportunity to blend the 2 coaching trees, the McDermott coaching tree with the Eldon Miller coaching tree. So obviously a former UNI player, played in the Arch Madness championship game in 1993, a head coaching experience at the University of North Dakota. He took that program from a D2 program ultimately to an NCAA tournament appearance as a head coach. He has assistant coaching experience at Iowa, Bradley, and Illinois State. Currently, he is with the Bradley Braves. Why he could make sense. He knows the university, right? He knows the expectations. He's been a head coach before. The floor would be really high with that kind of hire. But if he's not the head coaching candidate, he could be a really great associate head coach, in my opinion. And finally, I want to talk a little bit about Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson, former assistant under Coach Jake. After he left the Northern Iowa program, he was an assistant at the University of Minnesota, his alma mater. Johnson was able to recruit Minnesota prep standouts like Amir Coffey, Danielle Oturu, and Gabe Kelscher. They got him to stay at home and play for the Gophers. And so Johnson was also a key factor in the recruitment and development of Jordan Murphy, who broke many Gopher records during his career. In 2018, following 5 years of Minnesota, Johnson accepted a new assistant position under Travis Steele at Xavier. While at Xavier, Johnson helped land back-to-back top 30 ranked recruiting classes. Those classes including high-ranked prospects such as Zach Fremantle and Colby Jones. At Xavier, Johnson once again was tasked with the development and backcourt players. During his time as an assistant at Xavier, the team went a combined 51-37. We all know what Travis Steele did this year at Miami of Ohio. And so nice to know that Ben was a part of that coaching staff as well. And then on March 22nd of 2021, Johnson was announced as the new head men's basketball coach for the University of Minnesota Golden Gophers. And so Johnson was the 18th head coach in the program's history. On March 13th, 2025, he was let go following the team's loss in the Big Ten tournament and helped lay some of the recruiting foundation early in the Jacobson era, head coaching experience in the Big Ten, and quality assistant coaching experience. I don't see this one happening, but I really do believe it was worthy of the discussion. Mr. Duttler, what do you think about my 4 names in the candidate search?
Chris, I really like the thought process on the Brooks McCowan potential there. It's always nice to have someone that has called the shots within your program. And while being a D2, to have 13 years, I believe, calling the shots as a Division II coach, a head coach, you've got the game experience, you've got the recruiting experience. Now, granted, it's a little bit different level, but I think we just saw in Iowa City that there's not a whole heck of a lot difference between some Division I teams and some Division II teams if you have the right kid. I really give the Brooks McCowan a look if some of the other ones that we spoke about, I just don't happen to pan out. The John Little side, we talked a little bit about the little Phoenix pipeline with John, and then also with Paul Jesperson as well, being involved in the program there, both up-and-comers. Definitely worth taking a look there. The Brian Jones name, I think, is a little sentimental for some of us old Panthers. We remember him, but you see him sitting on the sideline on those Valley teams or for Illinois State or for Bradley. And man, boy, you just wish that Panther might come home at some point in time. And depending upon, who the head coach is, I think you're spot on. He would be that guiding force if we do happen to hire a head coach that doesn't have any head coaching experience. I think Coach Jake, when he assembled his staff, had his mentor on the sideline at one point in time to help navigate some of those first time coaching, whether they're jitters, whether there's just a sounding board, something that it's a lot easier to talk to somebody that has been calling the shots to get reassurance or just another point of view. I really think, depending upon who ends up getting hired and assembling the staff, is going to be obviously for recruiting, but also for game management and for program. How the program is going to be run, I think, is going to be important as well, just to have that sounding board to bounce ideas off of.
Brian, once again, thank you for that great analysis. And let's move on a little bit from the candidate discussion, and let's talk about the no buyout conversation. There is something that's getting a lot of attention now on social media, and honestly, it should. Coach Jake's contract, because there's a very specific clause in there that I think everyone will want to know about. And here's the language. The university acknowledges that the appointee, and that would be Coach Jake, has provided many years of quality service to the university and community and has volunteered prior financial sacrifices to aid the university in supporting other athletic goals. As such, the university agrees that in the event of the appointee's termination of this contract, the appointee shall not owe any liquidated damages to the university, and the appointee shall have no further obligation to the university, monetary or otherwise. Brian, let's break that down in plain terms. What it means is there's no buyout clause, there's no financial penalty, and there's a clean exit for Coach Jake. And listen, you can completely understand why that clause exists. This is a coach who gave 25 plus years to the program, helped build the brand, likely made financial sacrifices along the way, and earned a level of trust that very few coaches ever get. That part, I think, makes total sense. The other side, the reality, it still stings because the University of Northern Iowa loses its head coach. And as we'll talk about here in a little bit, who knows how many assistant coaches go with him? Who knows how many players maybe enter the portal and try to go to Utah State with him? And so we face losing staff, roster instability, and we received zero financial compensation in return. And the timing, that's the part that really jumps out. This is happening 8 days before the opening of the portal. So not only are we dealing with a coaching transition, we're walking straight into the most volatile roster window in college basketball with no financial cushion to help offset the disruption. Mr. Duttler, what do you think about the no buyout clause?
Well, Chris, the timing is never, ever good for any of this stuff, right? It is college athletics, and this stuff is bound to happen. No compensation or no buyout does, as you said, does sting a little bit. The financial considerations and sacrifices that Coach Jake made for the program and for the university as a whole. This is your longevity and loyalty clause. He has, in my opinion, has gone above and beyond helping out Northern Iowa as much as we can. We all, graduates and people looking in at the Valley, knows that Northern Iowa isn't the most funded program out there. There's a lot of things when it comes to amenities that a lot of other institutions, peer institutions have that simply that Northern Iowa doesn't have, practice facility, things along those lines. It's an interesting time for Northern Iowa, especially at this head coaching change. But I think the financial cushion timing, I think we probably both will agree that the next head coach, pending something huge, is probably not going to be in the salary range that Coach Jacobson's leaving at. So I think some of that financial cushion is going to be there. It's not in the multiple millions of dollars that you see in a lot of these buyouts, but I think when it comes to hiring a coach and what that new salary level is going to be, it's going to be reset a little bit, and hopefully some of those funds, should the donors be there, and the continued upward movement of the program after the year that we just got done completed is able to be put back into the program, whether that's in assistance, whether that's in, most likely it's going to be in NIL and in player retainment, player recruitment. And the timing's never right, but it's better that this happens here in the month of March, or as we get close to the Final Four, than it would be the month of May, when that portal has opened and there's not a lot opened and closed, and a lot of the player movement has already occurred.
That's such great insight, Brian. And so, once again, two things can be true at one time, right? The administration was trying to maybe give credit for years of service and try to be a loyal institution. But at the same time, maybe it's a little bit not just about the buyout money, but some of the things that you mentioned in your segment there, also about practice facilities and the ability to woo players to Cedar Falls, right? That maybe in Logan, Utah, you're going to have a little bit more opportunity, better practice facilities, playing in the Pac-12, maybe more NIL. And so things like that too. It's, once again, the clause is a respect move, but it's also a tough outcome for our favorite program in this exact moment in time.
Yep, completely agree.
So let's transition. Let's talk a little bit about the portal domino effect. And we've seen this with other programs in the Valley very recently. Coach Casey Alexander leaves Belmont and goes to Kansas State. And all of a sudden, we've got a handful of Belmont players that are in the portal, probably anticipated to join their coach at Kansas State. The reality of the situation is now, when a head coach leaves this late in the cycle, it's not just about the job opening. It's about the roster. And Northern Iowa now has to answer some immediate questions. And so maybe question one, Mr. Duttler, is do any of the UNI current players stay? Because players don't just commit to a school, they commit to a system of staff, a relationship maybe with Coach Jake. And when that changes, maybe everything is back on the table. Talk a little bit about maybe what players you think or hope that stay with the Panthers, and maybe some that you think might follow Coach.
Yeah, I was fortunate to listen to Coach Jake's press conference earlier, part of a 12 o'clock Monday press conference that all the coaches do. And he brought up an interesting point, is 20 years ago, this wasn't the deal, right? With portal. It is today. So the kids of today are used to the seasonality, or 8 months or a year, 2 years for those opportunities, where some of us older generation kind of guys and gals out there need to get behind a little bit. So they know about the fluidity. And as I previously said, I'm glad that it happened on March 30th and not on May 5th.
Yeah.
Because the portal is going to be active, as you said, here once we get past the national championship. A week from Tuesday, it'll be up and going for 21 days, I believe is what it is. But at least we're going to be operate with that window anyways. People that potentially could go, you take a look at Leon Bond right out of the chute. Started his career out in Virginia, came back closer to home, found a great home at Northern Iowa, turned it on significantly the back half of this year. You can see that game develop into something with the emerging Pac-12 and the old Mountain West, that conference, and that level of ability. You can see that happening. Benny Schweiger's another name to bring up, even though right now at this point in time, the eligibility has been exhausted, but they're trying to go get that extra year for him. So you don't know, can that game translate into a little bit more than maybe what Northern Iowa is able to do? And maybe Coach Jake having the opportunity to bring another kind of glue guy back into that program. The NCAA might ultimately decide if that's going to happen or not. Then you take a look at Will Hornstead, has come on strong, really grew his game a lot from his freshman year to sophomore year. Really think that maybe a little bit undersized at 6'7" to really be a big banger in the Pac-12. And as much as he's grown from year one to year two, if that growth continues to go, you never ever know. And Coach Jacobson's development, we talked about that earlier in the podcast today, is he's a developer of talent. And I think Will fits into that one. Another one just right out of the sheet would be John Hutchins, really the only freshman that got a lot of playing time. I don't know if that would be one that would really go out or be looking at other alternatives in the portal. But to me, those are really four names that to current staff or current roster that we have that would be names to watch. The other side of this, we've got to take a look at high school recruiting as well, because the class that Northern Iowa has signed, I believe, got three kids, one from Wisconsin, one from Missouri, and Cedar Falls, the Gertis kid, right? So you've got a local kid, you've got two guys from out of state. Do they want to remain committed to the University of Northern Iowa, or does that reopen that recruitment? Nothing says that they're not going to come in there, but we see all the time when that coaching change is made, basically everybody opens up that recruitment. So time is of importance for Northern Iowa to get somebody into that position, especially as we head into portal season, because those recruits could make a big difference on the way this roster looks and how many players we're getting.
I think that's something that you and I are saying out loud right now, is that the administration at Northern Iowa needs to understand, and they do, by the way. We're not telling them how to do their jobs, obviously, but that there is a sense of urgency in today's college basketball world, and a staff, not just the head coach, but a staff needs to be in place so that they can dive into the portal head on. We hope that a decision at the time of recording tonight, there is still black smoke from the Vatican, as my friend Brian Duttler likes to say. There is not a decision has not been made. And, that new coach, whoever that may be, needs to get on the phone, or needs to be able to get onto the phone to those three signees and talk to them about their vision now for their program and who they're going to bring on staff and what the program could look like in the very near future. And as you mentioned, as soon as there is a coaching change, players are able to just reopen their recruitment. So that has happened. And so reopening their recruitment doesn't necessarily mean that they will go somewhere else. They may reopen their recruitment, take another visit to Northern Iowa and go meet staff and see if it's still a fit for them.
Correct.
All right. So roster holes. Finally, always want to talk a little bit about maybe what that roster looks like. And as we build on the Deep in the Valley podcast, we really do want to take a deep dive into each one of the rosters and the deconstruction and the reconstruction of each one of the rosters and what they're going to look like in 26, 27. But just a first blush response, Brian, we know who graduated. We're not sure if anyone will enter the portal, but what type of player maybe do you see are holes on this roster as it sits today?
I think we're missing a big. We were one short, and it's tough at the Valley level. You have multiple bigs. Will, like we talked earlier, was great. Finding that whether it's ZZ Roof or whoever to come in to spell Will, we need a little bit more depth on the interior. I think we're probably short a ball handler right now. You take a look at how important Trey was to the program and the amount of assists, the amount of points, the amount of distribution, that point guard position right now. Well, RJ really filled in real well at the conference tournament, despite some of his injuries had all season long. Having that big and having that point guard is what I think is our two glaring holes as we go into the 26-27 season.
And now I'm going to be greedy a little bit. I'd like to see a little length, right? A little athleticism. When you say point guard, I think you're spot on the things that Trey Campbell brought. And I think that it's a staple of many point guards over the course of the Ben Jacobson, even Greg McDermott era. One of the things that I think that has been missing just a little bit is since Wes Washburn departed the program, right, is the point guard that at any moment can get into the lane on the bounce.
Correct.
And put some pressure on the dribble on a defense that makes people collapse to him. And then you kick out to open shooters, right? And so Trey had the ability, but his specialty, which I actually love that he's bringing back to college basketball, was the mid-range jumper.
Yep.
And so when he would attack on the dribble, he would stop at 15 feet and we'd get 2 points, which is cool. But somebody with a little bit more athleticism, a little bit more length that could get into the lane and really attack the rim, right?
Yep.
One thing that I was driving a lot this weekend, and I actually listened to the Elite Eight games, and one of the things I heard Tom Crean talk about is teams that can get from 5 team fouls to 7 team fouls on the opponent in a short amount of time can live at the free throw line for the rest of a half. And those that can get from 8 to 10 very quickly can live in the double bonus for the rest of the game. Yep. That is one thing that maybe we've missed without a Wes Watson type of player. And so a little bit more length, a little bit more size, a little bit more athleticism out of the point guard. And I think those are some things that hopefully we can address through the portal. And so here's one more thing. We just talked about it, but let's talk about it a little bit more. Northern Iowa, we're now just 8 days away from the portal opening, building a staff, retaining current players, securing signees, and then to hit the portal to create a competitive Valley roster. Butler, you've talked a lot about maybe what are some good names out there and where do we think the institution's going to go. I know that you've said it. I think I'll agree with you. I do believe that this is a Seth Tuttle job.
Yep.
I think it makes a lot of sense. One of the things that we haven't really talked about yet, though, is he's going to command a little bit lower salary than Coach Jake is currently using. So let me ask you this. We talked to friends from the Valley and then other mid-major leagues. One thing that the folks here in Springfield are talking about is Wanzo's making $600,000 a year, but it doesn't really leave a lot of their program money to go get players. If the new head coach happens to be Seth Tuttle, and if his salary is just a little bit lower than Jake, right? Because somebody that's never been a head coach before, do you think the institution could utilize those extra dollars to put into NIL and see if we can build that roster a little bit?
Yeah, I hope that's the case. And I think earlier on would be the donor support, right? Is because I think the way Jake's contract was structured is it was a base level from the university, but a lot of the additional support for staff and for him came from donor support. So if that commitment is there, and that's part of this whole new hire process, right? Is rounding up the donors, the big ones that are the loyal ones of the program. If their commitments remain strong to that level, yeah, maybe. And that's been the trend right now with mid-major basketballs. You're seeing a lot of guys that are being hired in, not at the higher end salaries of what you're used to seeing, but it's that mid-tier kind of salary that ends up being, I'll take the sacrifice early on if my money can go back into NIL, because you can't really do it once the contract is signed, but you can do it as part of the negotiation tactic up front. I hope that is what's occurring behind closed doors at this point in time, just to double check what our financial commitments are going to be. And I think even though not having that buyout stings a little bit, if we can use a little bit of the savings, so to speak, on a new head coach, maybe that doesn't have the experience that Jake had, obviously, through 20 years, we can invest that back in the program, be able to retain some players, and go on, get some other ones as well.
Depending on who the hire is, if it is a Seth Tuttle type of person, do we anticipate that Seth Tuttle is going to be the head coach at the University of Northern Iowa for the next 20 years? Or do we think that the current status of the game with the portal and NIL, maybe having the consistency, the continuity of a head coach for 20 years, maybe that has gone the way of the dodo? What do you think of that?
It's something about the state of Iowa that everybody wants to be there. And once they get there, you get that head job. It doesn't matter whether it's in Northern Iowa or Iowa State, people stay, right? So you'd like to think that it's not a 2 and done or a 3 and done, but you just never know. Most likely it's not going to be a 20-year deal. Heck, it might not even be a 5-year deal. You never, ever know, right? When opportunities, and that's the best thing about success is when you're successful, you have a lot more opportunities at your hand. Hopefully 3-4 years down the road, where Northern Iowa has been successful, UNI might be doing another podcast, exactly the same thing, just different names, because it's been a positive move. I think it's for a short term, but could it be 20 years? I'd be very shocked.
Me too. I think that the landscape, Iowa football fans, for example, they have really enjoyed the Coach Ferentz era. And you can complain all you want, but the success is there. He's been so solid that the biggest complaint I hear is that they're not exciting enough.
Yes.
Son of a gun. Boy, I'll tell you what, I'll take the winning percentage. One thing that we really haven't talked about, and we talked about it maybe a little bit earlier, but Coach Jake won 60% of his games.
Yeah.
And that's incredible, both overall in the Valley.
Yep.
So that has been something I want to talk about it. I worked at Southwest Missouri State, now Missouri State University, in 98, 99 when Coach Alford was the coach there. And they won, I want to say I can't remember if they won the Valley regular season and then lost at Arch Madness. I think that's how they were. But they got an at-large that year, 12 seed. They beat Wisconsin and they beat Tennessee and then lost to the eventual national champion in Duke in 1999. That is the last time that Missouri State University has played in the NCAA tournament. That's 27 years ago now. And in that same time frame, the University of Northern Iowa has gone to 9, I think, NCAA tournaments and won 4 games and gone to a couple of NITs and won a couple of games. And the consistency has been fruitful. And I think sometimes that's really easy to forget, especially the last 10 years. We've had a drought, and it is okay to admit that. It's not fun as a fan, but we haven't been horrible in those times.
Yeah.
We COVID year where we were 26-6 and they canceled the NCAA tournament. The year after, the bless their hearts, St. Louis County ended our season without an opportunity to play in Arch Madness. And so there were 2 additional opportunities there that were taken away from Coach Jake and his program. And I think we want to close tonight just to be able to say we enjoyed the consistency. Coach Jake, we want to thank you for the ride. It's been amazing. And to the institution, to the administration, we're excited to see who our next head coach is. And we're purple and gold all the way, man. Ever loyal.
Yep. Couldn't have said it any better.
All right. Hey, that is our emergency episode of Deep in the Valley with Chris Bowser and Brian Duttler. A massive shift in the Missouri Valley Conference coaching landscape. And one way or another, we'll keep tracking it closely. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it and follow along as we break down everything happening across the valley, from Cedar Falls to Des Moines, Nashville to Normal, and Carbondale to Chicago. We're just getting started deep in the valley.